Alright, so what's the best photography tool you can buy? Well, in my opinion, it's a printer. Yeah, a printer. Specifically a photo printer. What makes a photo printer the best photography tool? Well, if you're mostly a digital shooter like myself, a printer allows you to bring your images into the real world. Real world. Lets you touch them and feel them and hang them on the wall, Put them in an album for your family to enjoy later. You'll even see aspects of your work that you didn't notice before. I did. Here's a few more reasons to print your work. For instance, most of us use our preferred editing software. Lightroom, Capture One, Snapseed. Do they still make Snapseed? Oh, VSCO. Is VSCO still around? Anyway, so you slap an edit on there and then you call it good, right? Post it to whatever social media. That's done. You're done with that photo. That's how most photographers do it these days, I think. Unfortunately, if you do it that way, you're missing out on something like half the creative process of being an artist and a photographer. The other half of that creative process is picking your paper, picking your inks that you want it printed on, picking the thickness of the paper, the texture. You can even choose the frame, or do you want matte glass or acrylic to be the framing? You can even choose the color of the frame and whatever else you want to. The sky is kind of the limit in that department. A framed photo is a finished photo, I think anyway, or one in a photo album. Now, you don't have to print all of your photos. This is a process that should really only be undertaken with your absolute favorites. If I printed every single photo I ever took, I wouldn't be able to keep track of all the prints. I wouldn't have anywhere to put them all. So, you just kind of have to pick and choose. You have to edit your work down a little bit more when you're printing than you would if you were just keeping them in your cloud or putting them on a hard drive. Plus, if you need to share your work, it's so much nicer to pull out a physical album than it is a phone or a tablet. Alright, let's talk about the printer I'm using. I use an Epson EcoTank 8550. Why did I choose that printer? Well, I wanted to be able to print decently large prints on my own without relying on a lab, and the Epson can print up to 13 by 19. Plus, it is an EcoTank printer. I could never justify investing in a printer before the EcoTank system came out because the price of cartridges and ink was it was pretty ridiculous. Plus, this printer, unlike a lot of other printers that you're going to find on the market, comes with a full set of ink out of the box. It's really nice, and that ink is going to last you, or at least it lasted me, over a year so far. I've printed nearly 1,000 images on that printer, mostly 4x6s, a handful of 8.5x11s, a few 8x10s, some 11x14s, and a good number of 13x19s. And I still have not had to refill the tanks. Now, I did refill the gray tank, but that was a misunderstanding on my part. There's markings on the printer, and you're not supposed to refill it until it's at the very lowest one. I had a little bit of a goof moment where I didn't understand the instructions properly, and I ended up filling it when it was on the second to last mark. So, yeah, you don't have to do that. You don't have to refill it until it's, the one with the arrow on it. Alright, while we're talking about ink, this printer uses 6 different inks. 5 dye inks and 1 pigment ink. Check my notes here. It's got cyan, magenta, yellow, black, and gray with an additional pigment black. The printer does not use the pigment black for your photos, unfortunately. That is documents only, I believe. Printer paper, like normal printer paper. Let's talk about the cost of ink. Full set of ink bottles costs around $110. That's $110 you won't have to spend until a year or two after your purchase because, like I said earlier, this printer does include a full set of ink bottles to get you started. You also probably won't have to refill that ink until about a year later, like myself. And I didn't even really have to. I did it because I didn't read the directions properly. Anyway, these bottles are also purchasable individually, and they'll run you around $20, give or take, per bottle. Okay, so we've covered ink. Let's talk about my paper choice. I choose to use Red River paper because I find their prices and paper quality to be phenomenal for my purposes. I enjoy their 60-pound polar matte paper in particular. You can grab a sample pack of their papers for between $10 and $20. Alright, print quality. I am over the moon with the quality of these prints. I could not be happier. Now keep in mind, I've not used a more expensive printer, but the prints from this printer are everything I'd expect to get from a professional lab. And I did work at MPix for 5 or 6 years, so I know the quality that they're putting out, and I can compare that directly to this printer, and I am perfectly happy with this printer. Alright, okay, so I have had one issue with this printer, just one, and it was my own fault, I think. I was pushing the printer a little bit too hard. I was trying to make a little portfolio book, out of some 8.5 by 11s, so I ran 30 of them all at once. Shouldn't have done that. I should have ran maybe 10 or 15 of them, recalibrated, ran the rest. Because what happened was the prints started to come out with these little lines through them, like the printer missed places, and I think that running so many prints caused the print head to become misaligned. So anyway, 2 or 3 prints came off like that. I caught them, I reran those images after recalibrating the printer, and all has been well. And ever since then, I have been regularly recalibrating the printer, and I have not had that issue pop up again. Again, I think a printer is an indispensable piece of equipment, especially if you are a digital photographer. It's the best way to get your images into the real world. I just don't trust the cloud. I just don't trust hard drives fully. The hard drive could fail, whoever owns the cloud I'm using could decide that, they're going to delete our shit. You remember several years ago, Adobe did that. Go figure, Adobe did that. Tons of people lost a bunch of work, me included. I lost several images that I can never get back. They're just gone. And that was because I trusted somebody else to safeguard my stuff, my images, which that's not right. So now I have the cloud, I have a hard drive that I back everything up onto, and I also have a folder full of prints where I put my most important prints. I print them out as 4x6s, and that's how I save them. All right, another tip. You do need to be consistent with printing with whatever printer you choose. I think this is a little bit more of an issue with pigment inks than it is with dye-based, but nonetheless, the nozzles can clog. That's gonna be a headache. It's just gonna be a problem. You don't want that to happen. If I remember right, the 8550 needs to be ran once a week, once every 2 weeks. And I've been doing that, and I haven't had an issue with the nozzles clogging so far. I genuinely believe that a printer is the best photography tool you can buy, after a camera and a lens, of course. If I was starting my photography journey all over again, I would buy a camera, a 50mm lens, a printer, and then I probably wouldn't buy anything else for a while. Alright, thank you for watching. Really appreciate it. I hope you got something out of this video. If you did, I'd appreciate a like and, subscribe, all that jazz. And have a great day. Okay, I choose to use Red River paper because I find their prices All right.